BW Healthcare World's Thursday Thought Leaders. Our guest today is Mr. Manoj Saxena, who is the Managing Director of Bayer Zydus Pharma, and he's been in that role since April 2017. He's also the Country Division Head, South Asia for the Pharmaceuticals Division of Bayer. As a part of Bayer's Asia Pacific Pharma leadership team, Manoj is known for his contribution in driving the key strategies within the region, and he is also known for his passion for inclusion and diversity and represents the I&D Council of the Bayer Pharma globally. Welcome, Manoj, to BW Healthcare World. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Harbinder, and thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward for the conversation with you.
Awesome. So, Manoj, as a pharma leader, my first question to you is, how has been your journey in this space of pharma? Because we've seen the space transition from what it was 2 decades ago to what we see today. So what has been your journey like? What has been your experiences?
Yeah, no, Harbinder, it's been a fascinating journey. Little over 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry. And when I look back and see what immensely I have gained there, the first and foremost is I don't think any industry, and the reason why I have stuck around in this industry is I don't think there is any other single industry which has so much of purpose. Yeah. And actually purpose is the reason why I feel engaged, motivated, and to do what we are doing in the pharma world. Now, if you look at, one of the aspects which is really underrepresented at times and is not in the part of the open conversation is around the role of what pharma industry and innovative medications have done on simple life expectancy. When India got freedom, our life expectancy was in 30s. We were 33, 34. Yeah. As we speak, our life expectancy is mid 70s, 73 to 75. And since I started career, our life expectancy was less than 60, right? So now in the last 25 years, if our life expectancy has jumped by 15 years or so, it's really remarkable as to what we have seen in the last many years by looking at how the diseases have been treated, how the diseases have been managed well, what sort of quality of life we can give back to the society. And in that spectrum, it really brings a lot of joy and comfort that, this is a purposeful industry where what you work and what you are trying to, sell in the marketplace is really a remarkable impact on the society.
Manoj, you touched upon a very important aspect that, what we've seen is the life expectancy in terms of our age, the longevity has gone up. And you also mentioned this word, the quality of life. We've seen that while the longevity of life has been positively impacted, but this also brings in a lot of issues related to the quality of that life that you will lead in the later part of your journey, which makes healthcare a very important part of how we can impact the society and the people in it. So what are some of the insights of the industry and the key dynamics of this segment that impact how people will live in the future?
No, absolutely, Harbinder. And if you look at many diseases which are out of the conversation now, which used to be, causing havoc both on the mortality as well as the morbidity, which is the quality of life, has really changed. And essentially it is because of, of course, higher education, higher awareness, but more importantly, the role which is innovative healthcare has played across medications, vaccines, and all that. Now, in that, I guess the trends are going to remain the same, that how as a society we continue to look at, the quality of life from an index on what does that mean? Yeah. And the society is aging. India is a fairly young country, but what we have seen in across disease spectrum, be it cardiology, diabetes, respiratory disease, all chronic, we are mimicking the West. Rather, we are mimicking it much faster than what was anticipated. Yeah, because the lifestyles have changed dramatically. And in that, I think the focus on not just on volume, but the value play in terms of identifying newer ways of treating those diseases or managing those by innovation, by R&D, would play an important role. Yeah. You mentioned about the focus on healthcare. I think sometimes we say health is wealth. Yeah. And I often say it's not health is wealth. It's actually wealth is health. Our ability to spend money on healthcare. Yeah. And just to give you an example, when we look at access to healthcare, many times, Harbinder, in our common discussions, we talk about, oh, if the prices are lesser, we can have the greater access. Yes, pricing is important or affordability is important, but it's not the only spectrum of healthcare. Yeah. The healthcare infrastructure, the ability to diagnose, the ability to continue to the adherence to the pill, the ability to look at future treatments. Yeah. Ability to have doctors in those areas where the patients are. In nutshell, what I'm trying to say is we still spend much significantly lower amount of GDP, as compared on health as compared to the overall GDP. I think we need to really look at it. How do we bring in variety of elements to increase access? It could be insurance. Ayushman Bharat is a great step forward to it, but it has its certain limitations because it is also a large part of missing middle. There is less play of insurance. So I think those are also the trends. So how do we make sure that there is enough amount of money being spent on the healthcare, and moving on, not just the curative healthcare but also preventive healthcare. Yeah, so something like what Ayushman Bharat is trying to achieve, both in the inpatient but also in the outpatient. Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. So that's, I think, is the broader trend for India.
And Manoj, how big do you think is the pharma industry in India today? And what is the role that Bayer is playing in this segment?
Yeah. So I think that you framed a good question, because sometimes we say, pharmaceutical industry, and health and industry, some way counterproductive, because we also say health is very, very important and essential part of our life. From a number perspective, India is roughly around the domestic market is around $25 billion dollars. Yeah. And a similar amount is also being for exports. Yeah. We being a multinational company, we look at India from a perspective of what we can do for the Indian patient. Our purpose is science for a better life, and our vision is health for all, hunger for none. Bayer as a life science company, we look at what can we do to make sure that there is innovation coming in for disease areas where there is significant unmet need. And I'll give you certain examples to help you to understand it slightly better. And in that sense, we also look at it, what can we do and play our part when we say healthcare for health for all, also on affordability, on access, how do we build capabilities in India to really develop it. And the second part of life science is we are a significant player in crop science or agriculture in India. Yeah. And the two businesses are so purposeful, as you can imagine, right? For a country which is emerging, India soon would be the top three countries in terms of globally, in terms of economic, the largest economy. And in that, hunger and health are the two important pivot. Yeah. So we are working on that. Now, coming back to your question around what Bayer is doing for that. Yeah, we are fairly invested in India. We have been in India for 125 years, believe it or not. Yeah. So we are in India as more than any other company in India. And what we have contributed essentially around 3-4 things here. The first is, of course, bringing innovative products in India and making sure that India is part of that bringing in. Yeah. So focusing on, bringing innovative products as soon as possible. For example, last year, Harbinder, we launched 2 products. One was in diabetes, kidney disease. And, India is a diabetic capital. Almost 30 million patients have kidney disease. We bought a product which is first in class, innovative drugs, which delays the progression of kidney disease. Almost at the same time when we were launching it in Germany, US, UK. Yeah. So I think that's something which we see, that the Indian patients need the same class of drug, the same innovative therapies, what is there available in the West. Yeah. And that is what we have been continuously doing. And we would, our plan is to bring almost every product, as I said, of kidney disease. We've done it for heart failure, prostate cancer, and across the spectrum. The second is how can we have India, being a part of our research and development work. Yeah. And we often refer India from, because, India is a unique space. There is a lot of branded generics, a generic market. Yeah. But we feel that India could also develop on the ecosystem of R&D. So our participation in global clinical trials, we have an R&D science center, which works with the global team of R&D at Hyderabad. COVID has also helped us to brought it a little bit outside Hyderabad. So we have few colleagues working in other locations as well, in Bombay, in Bangalore. So that is that. And the third is, part of the healthcare is not just bringing new drugs, but also building the healthcare infrastructure. So we work closely with our partners on partners, whether it is doctors, patient groups, but partners like, as I speak, you saw in my title that I manage a joint venture. So we have strong partnerships, local partners. The JV is with Zydus Cadila, but we have also manufacturing partnerships with a lot of organizations here. We have CROs and other partnerships. So really working with the Indian ecosystem to work with them and see how can they come at the same level as the West, yeah, and the developed pharma economy. So those are the three major areas where we really focus upon.
And Manoj, this is one segment which is needs and has a lot of regulatory around it. What are your thoughts on the India's regulatory landscape for the pharma industry?
Yeah, so Harbinder, you are right. I mean, pharma, as we say always, right, it's the most regulated industry, and rightly so, because the scope of doing any error in pharma is not there, right? We can't play with, you can have a faulty ball pen, you can have a faulty furniture, but you can't have, the quality of the drug has to be absolutely right. So the whole regulatory spectrum is important. In India, the regulatory environment is slightly complex, but over the time, I've also seen the last 25 years, it's much more, it's getting more streamlined by the day. And that is the reason why we can bring faster, innovative drugs in India. Now, what can be, what could be good for the country is currently the health is a state subject, but some of the regulations are more federal and central. Yeah. So how can we bridge the gap and harmonize the policies for state and federal is something I think which can make things even faster, more simplified for every stakeholder, not just for pharma company, but also for the clinicians, the other stakeholders in the industry. The approval timeline. Some of the time when we participate in global clinical trials, yeah, India is one country and the clinical trial happens to be across the globe. Yeah, so how can we be a little bit more in terms of clear that the timelines are faster? Now, having said that, what we are also seeing in since the new clinical trial guidelines have come in 2019, has been the timelines are getting better. We are much more digitalized now in that the ministry also understands that. Yeah. So the efforts towards it is that. And for that effort, currently now we are doing almost 17 clinical trials in India. So we are fairly invested. We are doing almost every single clinical trial for all assets which we are trying to bring in to India, or we have already bought in India. Yeah? So we are significantly investing there. The third part is around regulatory, but this is also related to the how the academia, the talent, and the everybody look at it. Yeah, and I call it expertise in research and development. Yeah, we know India is the pharmacy of the world. We know we have manufacturing capability, but how can we build the regulatory ecosystem around making sure that there are talent which focuses on early research, yeah, early development? How can we have that sort of an expertise in clinical trial? How can we have hospital setups which are at par with the West in terms of doing clinical trials and not just seeing patients? Now, don't get me wrong. It's not that it's black and white. Life is always gray. So India is progressing very well. Yeah. Lastly, but I think an important aspect which has been talked about is the ICH, which is how do we harmonize regulatory policies with the Western world, the developed healthcare system, but also the emerging healthcare system. Yeah. So if there is a harmonized environment, probably what you do in India, it's much easier, to replicate that because you've already done in a fully developed healthcare ecosystem. Yeah.
And Manoj, another very important integral part of pharma sector is the R&D.
Yes.
We've seen that the R&D that we have seen in India traditionally has been basically more focused on creating a manufacturing base. But there's not too much of innovation that is happening. So can you talk a little bit about what Bayer's efforts have been in R&D, and in general, what do you think needs to happen to push that innovation in India?
No, you're absolutely right. So as we started, and this is more about India first, and then I'll come to the buyer world. As we started getting self-sufficient on medicines here in India, the whole focus was, can we build our manufacturing capacities to have the domestic consumption of it. And I think India has progressed reasonably well there, right? To be called now pharmacy of the world, almost one fifth drugs which are coming out in the generic space are manufactured in India. Over 60% vaccines are manufactured in India. So I think India on the volume play has done remarkably well. We are, third or fourth largest volume by volume in terms of the industry. Yeah. I think where we lack clearly, and I think that's the question, that is your question, is on the value play. And if I quote the recent remarks which the health minister gave, is also about that can we bring the value play in terms of and you also saw that in the budget where there's some focus around on creating centers which are center for excellence on doing R&D work. Now, what we are doing in the R&D space, partly what I already mentioned, that uh, a lot of clinical trials which were not coming to India, we are trying to bring virtually everything. Since the regulations around clinical trials have improved in 2019, post that we have built, and as we speak, we have 17 clinical trials across the different phases, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So that is what we are doing. Then secondly, we are also have set up around 5 years back at Hyderabad an R&D center to bring in and maximize the capabilities on the talent side. So we are deeply invested on R&D across the length and breadth, where our partnership with both the private and the government hospitals or the stakeholders, but also on the brick and mortar structure of the R&D. That is helping us in two or three ways. One, for a patient, it means early access of drugs. When you do a clinical trial, you are giving early access to the patients who does not have any other treatment options available to them. You're making the ecosystem thrive because you are doing these clinical trials or having this R&D center, which is at par to what the R&D or clinical trials we are doing in US or Europe or Japan or any other country, right? So you are making them, the ecosystem works in a similar manner. And lastly, it also fast tracks the approval timelines from a regulatory standpoint, because you have done clinical trials in India. They understand the patients which are in India, so the safety and efficacy is evaluated. So it brings the faster commercialization of products in India too.
So, Manoj, another very well-known fact is that everybody in the healthcare ecosystem and the pharmaceutical ecosystem is having the patient at the center, at the core. And every company today needs to have patient centricity at a fundamental level. And today we are technologically advanced to be able to create, or we are on the path to create personalized medication. We are able to understand the past outcomes, use AI to build intelligence. We have genomic studies which are going on today. How important, I wouldn't say how important, I think what is Bayer doing about keeping patient centricity at the core while developing their R&D?
No, that's absolutely important. Putting patients first in everything we do is our value, and we really mean it from an R&D perspective. Right at an early stage, what sort of therapy areas we are looking at? A disease area where there is already treatment available. incremental innovation is not something which we are focused upon. We are focused upon looking at breakthrough innovation. Yeah. So that really, is impactful. This is really changes the treatment modalities for clinicians, but more importantly for patients. Yeah. So right in terms of, our outlook is looking at disease areas where patients are really suffering a lot. Yeah. To then looking at clinical trials, how can we have clinical trials? And you are right, today clinical trials are managed and used with digital tools, which makes them a little bit faster, more personalized. How can we, carve out R&D where patients, and the previous data is also looked at it. Yeah. So I guess in that sense, a lot of digital initiatives are there. And the last is around when we commercialize, how can we make sure that we are hearing to patients? Yeah. And I'll give you one example. Pharmacovigilance is extremely critical. When we say patient centricity, of course, we look at how do we bring an innovative product, which areas patient, how can we have the patients to adhere, beyond the pill thing. But one aspect which is absolutely critical is the patient safety. How in a clinical trial setting the drug can behave differently, but in a real life environment, how the patients are, so in that sense, we have over 1,000 people who are working on patient safety. Yeah. We have partners like TCS who are helping us to put a digital tools to really look at analyze the data. Yeah. So we look at patient safety. So we keep on getting data from our doctors, from hospitals, from patients directly fed into that so that we keep on upgrading our prescribing information for healthcare practitioners so that the real-time data is being utilized there. So a lot is being done on the patient safety. And last is around, we also appropriately engaged with patient groups. For example, in India, we have a patient group called as Women with Wings on endometriosis. We work very, very closely with them to really understand the pain and sufferings of women in India on endometriosis. It's a very, very large, 1 out of 10 women in India suffer with endometriosis. And unless until we understand the pain, understand what a women goes through with endometriosis, we can't really develop our scientific programs, our messages, and other things. Yeah? So it's important that we understand and take insights from the patient groups, and that is what we are trying to do with the patient groups as well.
Manoj, I'd like to delve deeper into what you just said, because everything that you were talking of, data and technology, etc., is leading to a digital transformation in the industry. What does digital transformation mean for a pharmaceutical industry?
It means only two things, yeah. Better patient outcomes, yeah, and the better quality of life. Right. Those are the two things only. So if somebody is having heart failure, yeah, and with the digital tools, with the right therapies or innovative medication, if his hospitalization, which used to happen 2 or 3 times in a year, is down to one time in a year, it to me is the outcome, health outcome. And then if he is able to work, because in India, the heart failure patients are still younger, they are working. Yeah, they are productive. And so they can go back and continue to work wherever they are working and being productive and contributing to their family. That's the quality of life. Yeah. So that's the focus with digital tools or with anything, right? Whatever we do, that doesn't change.
And how has Bayer's journey evolved in the digital transformation?
Actually, a lot across, as I mentioned about R&D. Bayer has been awarded for the best digitalization solution in the production. So one of our plant in Italy was awarded as the most digitalized plant. Yeah. So in manufacturing, in supply chain, yeah, but also in go-to-market. So reaching out to healthcare practitioners in making sure. And last is around patients. Yeah. For example, in women's health, where we have leadership. There is less focus on topics like family planning, contraception. And also in India, most of the pharmacies are men. Yeah. So for a woman who wants to understand family planning, contraception topics, what choices she has, it's very difficult for her to go out and to ask a pharmacist. Yeah. And the doctors, while giving them counseling, they can't give time again and again because of the patient load is just too much on gynecologists. So we are helping gynecologists by putting a chatbot. This is a chatbot on Facebook, which is AI-enabled chatbot, where women can, in the comfort and the privacy of a home, can actually log on and clarify some questions with a chatbot whenever she feels like. Yeah. So many digital initiatives like this, Harbinder, which can help the women or the patient to feel empowered and to understand what choices he or he have in the healthcare system are the areas where we want to look at and continue to strengthen.
And Manoj, would you want to share some, shed some light on how's been Bayer's journey in the last 125 years of being in India? Being a multinational, and India is a very unique country to work in. Whether it comes in terms of creating an access for healthcare, we have interiors of India which are tough to be reached, especially when it comes to healthcare and pharma. Then we have a regulatory framework which could be very different from what we've seen globally, and could be working in silos. R&D, which was more manufacturing oriented, suddenly technology has come in and transformed. How has it affected Bayer's journey in the 125 years of being present in India?
So, Harvinder, that's a question I can speak for 1 hour, but I don't know. I don't think we have so much time. But in a nutshell, it's been a fascinating journey. It's been a fascinating journey to be in India for 125 years and being part of that, where we have really contributed to society in many ways. And of course, we started as a chemical company globally, yeah, and then focused on pharma. Over time, the company has also transitioned, yeah. But some of the innovations what we have built in and is one of the innovations which I'm really proud of is aspirin. Yeah, this is over 120 years globally, and it still contributes. And if you look at in the management of many chronic illnesses, cardiovascular, diabetes, or cardiometabolic disease, aspirin is still a very important contribution. Yeah. So one, I guess in India, particularly across disease areas where we have our presence, products which have gone off patent still contribute significantly for the Indian patients, and I think that is what makes us all proud, and also pushes us to continue to focus on R&D, continue to look at breakthrough innovations, continue to look at how can they impact the society. Second is across, the length and breadth of the country, Bayer, while has transformed in India in many ways. Today, our presence is life science company in both pharmaceuticals, but also in agriculture. Yeah. And when I say pharma, actually we have significant presence in our consumer health, portfolio as well in India, or self-care. Across the breadth, I think Bayer is perceived as a reputed organization, very transparent, and more importantly, is being trusted by all the stakeholders, whether it is in the government machinery, but also in the customers, right? Whether it's farmers, patients, and they feel that when they will take Bayer's product, it is a quality product, it is innovative product, it's going to give them benefits. Yeah, and that is what we see across the spectrum. And I think being part of that approach where India is transforming, and we also playing our small role to see that India progresses and becomes a developed country.
And Manoj, we've seen that 125 years is a long journey. But what's next at Bayer? What is it that we can expect from the organization in the next few years?
Yeah, so immediately as I said, we have launched a couple of assets last year, 3 assets actually innovative, and these are all breakthrough innovations. We would be also launching another one in women's health, which is again first time in India. It's a path-breaking approach in women's health as a quadriphasic pill. We are continuing to look at areas where we are currently doing research in phase 3 to bring those assets in India. 2 areas where we are focusing upon is one is the oral anticoagulant. I know this may be a complex thing for you, but I know you have been in the healthcare spectrum for a very long time. So for cardiometabolic disease, You need oral anticoagulants. We were the first company to come with factor 10. 10 years back, now we are looking at factor 11, which would be very, very safe, highly efficacious. Asundexian, as we speak, there are a couple of trials also going on in India. We are also looking for post-menopause. There is, as we know, India is aging. People are looking at not just the treatment but also managing and becoming better. So in that we are having a set called as elinzanetant, which we will look at in postmenopausal women. Globally, we are also very highly invested in the next innovation wave for pharma industry, which is cell and gene therapy. Yeah, across a variety of spectrum of diseases, which are looking to put our technology on cell and gene. So that is something which is very, very exciting. And we are also looking at how do we over time work with the regulators to bring those products in India. Lastly, I think our focus, is also looking at health for all, right? So when we look at that, we also look at it, how can we build better access for our product? And one of the aspect is around that we follow a tiered pricing, Harbinder, which is getting even more nuanced by putting healthcare systems, by looking at the outcomes, what value we offer with our innovation drug. So sometimes the pricing, for example, our pricing is not similar. While we are trying to launch at par as US or UK or Germany, but our pricing is very different based on the country requirements. Yeah. So we continue to look at expanding access in India. And lastly, I think is beyond the commercial footprint, we would stay invested in building the innovation ecosystem in India. Also on other spectrum, for example, our sustainability initiatives, we have 100 million women sustainability initiatives in low and middle income countries. India is one of the major participants there. We have two projects as we speak signed up. One is with the FPAI, Family Planning Association of India. The other is with UNFPA, and these are curated projects designed for India. So beyond commercial footprint, we'll continue to focus on other areas, to strengthen really the landscape for what we can contribute in India.
Awesome. And Manoj, since we are in the thought leader show, let's focus on you. What do you do in your free time? What are your hobbies? Do you get free time?
Of course, I think we all should get free time, right? And if you are not getting free time, something we have to do to get free time. Work-life balance is extremely important at Bayer, and I am really fortunate to have teams who have been very supportive with that. So we take regular breaks, so to re-energize ourselves so that we can contribute even more when we get back to work. So how do I spend free time? I think the first is the family, because at times with work, you get over engaged. So when you get free time, how can you have quality conversations, quality time with the family? The second is also around me time. I like to read books. I like to listen to podcasts. I think I watched a couple of your Thursday Thought Leadership on the YouTube as well, Harbinder. So things where, I probably can learn, expand my views, thoughts, get different perspectives, counter views. I think the podcast or the audio books. I also read physical books, though, is something which I do. But also doing some fun activities like playing tennis. The Mumbai rains are not allowing me to do so often these days. But playing tennis, traveling, listening to music, doing stuff with everybody does, eating good food, watching movies, and enjoying the time.
That's so nice. That's so nice. And Manoj, what is your leadership style? I mean, what is it, that one mantra that you follow while managing such a large business, such large teams?
Yeah, so one mantra which I feel is I don't believe in so much in hierarchies, Harbinder. Yeah, I want to connect, and I am connected with our frontline the way I'm connected to my direct reports. Yeah, so how can we create an organization which is less bureaucratic, but more purpose driven? And in that, sometimes, how do we take decisions? How can we empower colleagues that allows them to take decisions? is something which I really foster upon. Yeah. So I would say, I want to recognize people by their roles and what they bring, value to the organization rather than by designations. Yeah. And that's my leadership style.
So, Manoj, since we are talking of innovation, we are talking of R&D, and what do you think can India do to foster the culture of innovation in pharma industry so that we are moving from the just the incremental innovation to a breakthrough innovation?
Yeah. No, Harbinder, I think your question is very, very correct. Yeah. In India's journey to become pharmacy of the world has been, fabulous. Yeah. But now, how do we move from volume play to value play? Can only trigger when India and everyone, including ours, look at how do we innovate in India. Yeah, not just make in India. And in that, I think three things which I feel could be. One is the whole innovation mindset, and what I mean by mindset is how can we have academia, skill development, which focuses on building basic research, which focuses on making sure that the talent is driven towards doing basic research. For example, I'm not talking of pharma research, but in general, we have around 200 odd, that was the statistics, 200 odd researchers out of a million population. Yeah. China has almost 1,300. Yeah. 4 or 5 times. Yeah. Korea has 7,000. Yeah. And now, how can we, build that ecosystem where at schools, in universities, in offices, in various other functions, industries, the whole mindset around let's do basic research, let's value innovation. I think it's important to live that innovation mindset, yeah, and not always look at from a, from a. So that is one, and I think we can do because we have set that up. We have seen that happening in few institutions, few academias, few universities, few corporates like us, yeah. The second is how can we simplify innovation by putting regulatory approaches, including the IP, and IP is very, very important. Pharma research is expensive. When you bring a new innovation, it takes 10 years. It takes 2 to 3 billion euros to come with the innovation. So that is expensive. How can you make sure that there is, the regulatory processes are faster? It is harmonized with the best countries where they appreciate innovation. And how can you make sure that the resolution on patents, if there are, could be fast tracked? So the whole IPR ecosystem. And lastly is, as a society, from a framework of how can we incentivize innovation? So, for example, there is manufacturing, which came in the PLI scheme. How can we really incentivize innovation at every level? Not just from a funding. Of course, funding is critical, and I said 2 to 3 billion is not easy. But more importantly, how can you give better access? Yeah, and we know access is in India is always looked at from a pricing, but how can you bring in the innovation element and you see value and the outcomes which innovative drugs bring in? Yeah, so how can you make sure that you're giving enough incentives so that any organization can take risk? And that is the reason why, we are spending almost 16-17% of our net sales, not profit, net sales on R&D. So when we sell something at 100 rupees, 17 goes back for research so that there is a new innovative drug 10 years or 15 years from now. Yeah. And, in the Indian spectrum, most of the companies are spending anywhere between 3 to 4%. Yeah. So in that sense, the whole incentives are needed to really support the innovations. Yeah.
So, Manoj, since you're talking of innovations and the funding, one of the most important aspects to any business, not just pharma, is its people. So how would you rate the quality of talent that India is producing for the pharma globally?
No, it's actually very, very right. So if India has thrived in formulations is because of the talent which was there in manufacturing. Yeah, the chemistry, and that was the reason why India became a hub. But as we progress, I guess the focus on academia, and we partly discussed that in our questions around R&D, what can India do? is around the capability of India to really look at areas which are future areas in terms of pharmaceutical research, innovation, and topics like that. So biology, for example, the cell and gene area, work on basic research, educating people for the right IPR, the patent system. Those are the important areas where India needs to focus upon. But having said that, I think the talent landscape in India is very, very promising, and that is the reason why a company like ours, we have R&D center in India, which is mostly utilizing the digital capabilities of India. Yeah, so this is focused on data science and analytics, where India is very strong. Yeah, and as I speak, I think there are not buyers. There are many other companies who are deeply invested in India in building talent on that. So the India landscape on the digital side, on the AI side, data is very strong. Probably on the research side is something where the academia can also focus upon.
And Manoj, also when we are talking about people, the another aspect, when we talk about pharma, healthcare, etc., we forget the non-medical stuff. The ones who are front-ending the brand to the doctors. The medical reps. Do you think that technology can be used or is being used to bring efficiency in how a pharma company creates and maintains a connect with the doctor to keep them informed of the new developments?
We are doing efforts like many other companies. COVID was a catalyst, right? There was a meme circulating around during COVID. Who is leading the digital transformation? Is it your CTO? Is it your CEO? Or is it COVID? But having said that, you are right. The pharma industry has been very traditional in its approach for go-to-market. Yeah, and the bulk of the work is done by the front line, which we refer to as medical rep in the clinic, and these are repeat visits. And this has started when the information flow or the availability of information was very difficult. Yeah. So in the past, the model was we innovate our products, we do a lot of research, we generate a lot of data, and we submit to a regulator. Then the regulator allows us to market that product in India. Yeah. The doctors, having studied in the medical colleges, have studied about the disease, but they have not studied about this the new drug which has come in. So our rep used to be the front end in giving them information. Today, for the last decade or so, the information access is not, it's very easy. The doctor can Google it and find it, or they have access to medical journals, they have access to various webinars, they have access to other congresses or conferences. So the role of medical rep has changed in that. Yeah. One is in terms of how can we provide digital tools so that he's equipped to share more data which the doctor is looking at. Otherwise, it's an interaction with the customers which is not so meaningful. Believe me, I guess on the positives is pharma industry is the only industry where there are so many customer interactions. I don't think we are talking of multiple interactions within a month sometimes with the customers. Yeah. How do we maximize that with digital is something that you're focusing upon. So tools like approved emails, tools like video calls rather than doing a physical travel, tools like medical team also connecting with doctors, access to a website, access to chatbot for patients. Those are definitely helping the medical rep to really see and give knowledge, value, what a doctor is looking for or what a healthcare stakeholder is looking for. So digital is playing an absolutely important role there in making the rep more digital native, so that he's just not focused on 2 minutes of conversation. He's really looking at what is missing from an information piece and how can I quickly give it to the doctor who's looking to treat the patient.
And Manoj, you are leading the inclusivity and diversity aspect for Bayer globally.
Yes.
What is your belief that in terms of, there's a lot of conversation that happens in the corporate world. Do you think enough is being done? And even if it is done, that what is something that needs to happen to create a true inclusive and diversity atmosphere and culture and environment in a corporate?
Yeah, I genuinely feel that there has been a lot of meaningful work on the inclusion and diversity. Yeah, so I don't think now it's a lip service. As if that is what you are indicating to. A lot of companies are really doing remarkable work in building their organizations, which is built with diversity and inclusion and equity, right? So I think that's also important as we moved in. We started with diversity, then we added inclusion and diversity. Now we have equity as well. And a lot of companies, including ours, are really playing very, very, or not playing, really making sure that our managers, for example, our variable or incentives for senior managers, of course, the board is driven with these metrics as well. So we are keeping at such a high level where these are as important as sustainability, which sustainability is also important. But yeah, and so I guess there are a lot of companies who are very, very serious. And it's always the case when you are doing a significant change management. Yeah. Sometime back, we were discussing around digital. It also started that very few companies became digital native. And then they saw it is a business case. And then now everybody, it's becoming a sort of a cliche that everybody is talking about digital transformation. Yeah. So in that aspect, you are right that on the diversity and inclusion, there may be few companies which are doing a very meaningful work. But I think there are many companies which are seriously looking at them and trying to change their policies, trying to change their culture. But it's not an easy change. The change is slow, but I'm sure there are many companies looking at it very, very closely. Yeah. So I guess from a conviction side, started with that there's a lot of merit in diversity and equity, right? The profitability increases, the decision making is much faster, the diversity of thoughts are there, and there's a lot of research now, Harvinder, to convince anyone. Yeah. So if the more we talk about it, the more we do walk the talk, the more we change in our approaches there. At Bayer, we have seen huge transformation happening on the DEI.
Awesome. Manoj, it has been such a pleasure speaking to you, understanding the journey of Bayer, understanding what is it that you are doing, the ethos, like you mentioned, that you're in a business which is a purposeful business. It is driven by a purpose. And the purpose, as I understood, is health for all, hunger for none. And second is what was very breathtaking to understand was that you're focusing on breakthrough innovations and not just on incremental innovation. So, it seems like a great job that you guys are doing. I wish you the best, and I thank you, for taking out time to speak with us at BW Healthcare World.
Well, thanks a lot, Harbinder, for having me, and thank you for all the insightful questions, yeah, which you asked, and hopefully I could answer to the best of my knowledge of Bayer. Bayer is a very, very large organization, and I hope I did a decent job there.
Absolutely, sir.